This is India's #1 news network, and you're watching News9. English news as it should be.
And our top focus today, India and the United States have released a framework for an interim trade agreement where the government has agreed to eliminate or reduce duties on wide range of US goods, including farm products. The India-U.S. trade pact will open a $30 trillion market for Indian exporters, especially MSMEs, farmers and fishermen. Commerce and Industry Minister Piyush Goyal has informed this about on Saturday. He said that the increase in exports will create lakhs of new jobs, opportunities for the country's women and youth. US will also slash reciprocal tariffs on Indian goods to 18%, providing a huge market opportunity in key sectors such as textiles and apparels, leather and footwear, plastic and rubber products, organic chemicals, home decor, artisanal products and select machinery in the world's largest economy. Piyush Goyal further stated that tariffs or import duty will go down to zero on a wide range of goods, including generic pharmaceutical gems and diamonds and artifacts parts, thereby further enhancing India's export competitiveness and the Make in India campaign. India will also get exemptions on aircraft parts, tariff rate quota on auto parts and negotiated outcomes on generic pharmaceuticals, leading to tangible export gains in these sector. Piyush Goyal also said that the agreement reflects India's commitment to safeguarding farmers' interests and sustaining rural livelihoods by completely protecting sensitive agricultural and dairy products. Meanwhile, Union Agricultural Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan has reiterated India's stand that farmers' interest will be protected. Listen in. Well, a major groundbreaking development in India-US trade deal. The first framework is out. Big boost for Indian exporters. Well, we have a reaction coming in of Union Minister Shivraj Singh Chauhan. Listen in.
वाणिज्य मंत्री पीयूष गोयल जी ने संसद में भी सारी स्थिति अपने वक्तव्य में स्पष्ट कर दी है। मैं फिर दोहरा रहा हूं, भारत के किसानों के हित पूरी तरह सुरक्षित है। हमारे छोटे किसान हो, बड़े किसान हो, हमारे कृषि उत्पाद मुख्य रूप से जो हमारे थे वो सब के सब सुरक्षित रहेंगे। ऐसी कोई चीज के लिए बाजार नहीं खोला गया।
यूएस ट्रेड डील में भी भारत के जो सेंसिटिव सेक्टर्स हैं, एग्रीकल्चर को लेके, डेयरी को लेके, उनको संरक्षित किया गया है। हमने पूरे देश भर से आई हुई खबरों को देखा, चारों ओर उल्लास है। हमारे जितने लोग भारत के निर्यात में जुड़े हुए हैं, भारत के टेक्नोलॉजी सेक्टर से जुड़े हुए हैं, भारत में नई आधुनिक टेक्नोलॉजी लाकर यहां ग्लोबल सप्लाई चेन्स, ग्लोबल वैल्यू चेन्स का हिस्सा बनना चाहते हैं, ग्लोबल कैपेबिलिटी सेंटर्स लगाना चाहते हैं, निवेश करना चाहते हैं। अलग अलग क्षेत्र जो विशेषकर लेबर इंटेंसिव है, जिसमें लाखों करोड़ों लोगों को नौकरी का, रोजगार का साधन मिलता है, वो सब कितने उत्साहित हैं इस ट्रेड डील से। हमारे मछुआरे जो सी फूड एक्सपोर्ट करते हैं, उन्होंने जिस प्रकार से सभी कोस्टल रीजन्स में खुशी मनाई है, ये दर्शाता है कि ये ट्रेड डील भारत के उज्जवल भविष्य का शुभ संकेत लेके आई है। मित्रों, मैं मानता हूं कि इस ट्रेड डील से हमारे जो सूक्ष्म, लघु और मध्यम उद्योग है, एमएसएमई सेक्टर है, हमारे इंजीनियरिंग सेक्टर के सभी प्लेयर्स, चाहे ऑटो कंपोनेंट्स बनाते हो, एयरक्राफ्ट पार्ट्स बनाते हो, इंजीनियरिंग के अलग अलग प्रकार के सामान अमेरिका में बेचने का काम करते हो या भविष्य में करना चाहे, हमारे टेक्सटाइल क्षेत्र, हमारा जेम एंड ज्वेलरी सेक्टर, हमारा लेदर गुड सेक्टर, हमारा मरीन गुड सेक्टर, सभी को ढेर सारे अवसर, ढेर सारे मौके इस ट्रेड डील के माध्यम से मिलेंगे।
Well, I'm being joined by geopolitical expert Ravi Lothumala and my colleague Shweta Kothari as well for more on this. Ravi, the first framework is out. A lot India gains and a lot US also is gaining. Your opening comments on the first tranche of the deal, sir.
I mean, it is a wonderful landmark deal between India and well as US. This was much expected on the lines of India gaining, and at the same point of time, they are not budging to the tariffs being raised earlier and being threatened by US in terms of going beyond 50, 25, 50, and so on and so forth. But look at this way. There were a lot of hues and cries from United States stating that India is not listening, blah, 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 all those things. Plus, they were cribbing about Russian oil, etc., etc., etc. India never commented about it. India never opened its word. That is the beauty of our cabinet ministers, our prime ministers, and commerce ministers. So at the end, we were very much sure that these trade deals are going to happen, not at a threat level, but at a negotiable table across the table, which are going to be beneficial for both the countries. So this is a wonderful landmark deal, Nancy, and I would like to say that both the countries, India and US, benefit equally, not just it's a one-sided deal.
Right, Ravi. I'm also being joined by Shweta Kothari. Shweta, a landmark agreement has been signed, and the key element that we have always been talking about is the agriculture sector and the poultry sector. There is a protective shield for this sector. How is India protecting our most important sectors, which is agriculture sector and the emerging poultry sector?
All right, Nancy, since this is, a landmark trade agreement, as Ravi rightly pointed out, but there is more clarity now coming in finally by the way of that joint statement between India and US. Let me quickly read to you what Piyush Goyal, the Commerce Minister, has said. He said that this is going to open India's access to a $30 trillion market, specifically for India's exporters. Now, that was on expected lines, of course, by the way of the initial announcement that was also made by US President Donald Trump. Now, he's specifically talked about how US has now slashed reciprocal tariff to 18% from 25%. I'm going to come to Russian penalty in just a bit because I think that is still very contentious, and perhaps Ravi can also come in there. But as far as reciprocal tariff is concerned, it was at 25%. It's now at 18%. There's also a huge market opportunity, as we've been discussing, in the contours of the deal as far as textile, apparel, leather, footwear, plastic, rubber products, organic chemical, home decor, artisan products is concerned. So those were on expected lines that labor-intensive sectors will get a leg up as a result of this deal. But remember, it is still a substantial 18% reciprocal tariff from a 0%. So one has to understand that there will be challenges that some of these industries are going to face vis-a-vis other South Asian exporters, for that matter, Bangladesh, when it comes to textiles. So challenges continue to persist. Now, a few point of clarification there, because Piyush Goyal says tariffs will also go down to zero on wide range of goods, including generic pharmaceuticals. Now, remember, generic pharmaceuticals never really attracted a 25% tariff. They were always exempted from reciprocal duties. So I'm not very certain if there's going to be much change there as far as generic pharmaceuticals is concerned. Gems and diamonds is a great leg up. Aircraft part also, I think, is going to give a huge boost to India's aircraft industry. So all in all, I think this agreement reflects India's commitment, as Piyush Goyal is mentioning. But let's come to agri sector now, because that's been the most contentious. India always maintained that we want to protect our farmers, so agri sector will never be open. But if you look at the interim agreement, that's the first point mentioned, that India's agri sector will be opened up to US agriculture produce. However, government is now clarifying that it's only a partial opening up of agri sector. So for example, dairy products and agri sector, including maize, wheat, rice, soya, poultry, milk, cheese, ethanol, tobacco, certain vegetables will remain protected. So we are, as a matter of fact, partially opening up our agriculture sector for the very first time. Now let's come to crude oil, because that has always been a major point of contention where India has maintained that India will exercise its own sovereignty when it comes to where it purchases crude oil from. Now, on the basis of the statement that has also been made by White House, the White House has once again reiterated that India has committed to stop purchasing Russian crude oil. That goes against the very official statements that India has made. So I think perhaps a question there for Ravi as well. Ravi, I'm looking at the White House official correspondence, and it clearly once again states that India will stop purchasing, has committed to stop purchasing Russian oil. What's happening here? Because a lot of contradiction between what India is saying versus what US is saying, and that contradiction stays.
I mean, Shweta, this is a well-asked question, and it's a debatable question all the time. See, what is India's sovereignty in terms of what is its, where does it want to buy the oil, or for that matter, trade? It is at the
Ravi?
India's interest.
Hold on to your thought. We have a breaking coming in. Prime Minister Modi has reacted to deal. He has taken to his social media platform and he has said that we have agreed on a framework for an interim trade agreement between our two great nations. I thank President Trump for his personal commitment to the robust ties between our countries. This framework reflects the growing depth, trust and dynamism of our partnership. It strengthens the Make in India by opening new opportunities for India's hardworking farmers, entrepreneurs, MSMEs, startups, innovators, fishermen and more, and it will generate large-scale employment for women and youngsters as well. India and the United States share a commitment to promoting innovation, and the framework will further deepen investment in technology between us as well. This is Prime Minister Modi's first reaction after the first interim framework has been out. Continue, Ravi. Over to you.
So, Shweta, based on this question is, see, again, when we do business at the same point of time, when Commerce Secretary like Piyush is talking about it, so when these trade agreements are happening, there's a lot of weighing of pros and cons along with the countries and deals. If you look into it, let's say, for example, if there was a oil cheaper coming from Venezuela or US, and then compared to Russia, pretty much that can be on a negotiating factor. It does not mean to say that, see, there is a difference between financial transactions, dealings, and personal relationships. India always maintain qualitative
our official
relationships.
stance, the government's official stance, what it's telling people of the country right now, is contrary to the statements they're making to US President Donald Trump?
See, again, whatever the country talks about it, it's up to them, and whoever is stating the statement, it is up to them. What kind of statements? But we as Indians, we have to look into what is coming out from the Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal's statement or Prime Minister Modi's statement. That has to be validated.
Are you saying we are
It's
not going
the
to?
second
Are you saying we are not going to believe what Donald Trump is saying or what White House is saying? You know what, Ravi? I think it's time we call spade a spade, and it's important to realize that there are contradictory statements coming in. No matter what sort of justification we try and give to the people of this country today, there are contradictory statements coming in. India continues to say, and as it should, that our energy needs, our energy priorities are quite aligned to where we get cheaper oil from. We have to cater to the need of 1.4 billion people, and that's it. But my concern is the narrative that US is spinning. My concern is the narrative that Donald Trump is spinning across the world, that we have decided to stop purchasing Russian oil while we haven't said so. So, what I'm trying to ask you here is that are there contradictory statements being made, and then who's responsible for that contradiction?
On the same lines, earlier, Dr. Jaishankar Raman, External Affairs Minister, said it is up to the people whatever they want to take and however they want to react. As India has maturity and capability to deal the situations in the right way. So anybody from any country can talk anything, but we as Indians, we only take the words and the statements coming from the PMO office, as well as the right now PMO office, as well as the Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal's office. That statement is true.
Okay, again, as I said, this contradiction doesn't really augur well, Nancy, for the larger public, because there needs to be more clarity. Our official stance cannot be contrary to what Donald Trump is saying India's official stance is, which means there is something missing here as far as communication channel is concerned. But moving away from Russian oil, there's lots of other things that the interim trade agreement talks about. Remember, this is an interim agreement, Nancy, which
Absolutely.
means this is not the final, U.S. trade bilateral trade agreement. The details will be worked out over many weeks and months to come. So, as far as interim agreement is concerned, we have decided to, as a matter of fact, open up our agriculture sector when it comes to dried distillers grains, red sorghum for animal feed, tree nuts, fresh and processed foods, soybean oil, wine and spirits, and additional products as well. So, partially opening up our agriculture sector so as to also protect our farmers, but at the same time give some sort of leeway there for the US to agree to an interim deal. Remember, agri, poultry, as well as Russian oil were some of the roadblocks to reaching these deals. And so it essentially means that negotiators from both the US and India side tried very hard to work at the contours of this deal to make it a win-win proposition, because India was sticking its neck out that we will continue to protect agri sector. Now, moving on to other parts of the deal, as I said, labor intensive sectors is concerned, the interim trade agreement specifically mention how Indian goods originating from India, including textiles, apparels, leather, footwear, plastic, rubber, organic chemicals, home decor, etc., will again get a leg up. So I think, as far as those sectors is concerned, labor-intensive sectors definitely going to benefit out of this deal. Ravi, I want to come back to you, on agri sector, because again, that was another major point of contention. It does look like India has managed to tread a very fine line on agriculture, opening up certain fields while also keeping, those which are close to India, which are very important, including wheat, maize, rice. They will remain protected.
So coming back to these questions, Shweta. So if you look into the kind of a trade agreements that has been going on between US and India, there were long discussions were happening. It was today we see the landmark deal happen, but since several months, these discussions have been going on. US was pushing to open up the agri sector, but India is not interested in opening up sector. Protecting farmers is the priority of it. But when we open, we want to make sure that that is something which is again benefiting Indian population, and Indian protecting Indian farmers. So our commerce team has carefully looked into all the pros and cons and evaluated it under the best interests of India, and then whatever the negotiation table happened, it all happened today. It's a good thing.
Okay, there's also a commitment as I look through the deal contours, Nancy. There's also a commitment as far as India promising to buy U.S. energy products is concerned. So India, the deal says that India intends to purchase $500 billion worth of U.S. energy products, aircraft parts, precious metal, technology products, uh, and coking oil over the course of next 5 years. And India and the United States will sign increased trade in technology products, including graphic processing units, the GPUs, and the goods that are used in India data centers. So, there's more clarity coming in as far as that $500 billion uh, access to US is concerned. So, if you remember, I'll jog your memory back to what US President Donald Trump wrote when he surprised the world that India and the US have finally arrived at a deal. He said, US will get benefit of about $500 billion as India is likely to purchase that amount of US energy products. Now, it is come by the way of the deal, Ravi, that's the number. It is in fact a correct number, and it's not on the basis of the trade deal and how it will multiply over years, the trade bilateral trade between the two countries. It's solely to do with how much India will purchase by the way of energy products, coking oil, crude oil from the US, and India is making there a commitment of $500 billion.
I mean, absolutely, Shweta. As I said, this is a big deal. $500 billion is a very big deal. But If you look into the other areas, right, the GPUs, graphic processing units, etc., whatever it is, we are talking about all the multi. If you look into multicultural, multi-thing about what are all the trades areas, etc. It is definitely a wonderful deal, I would like to say, from the US standpoint of view, or even from the India standpoint of view. If you talk about the numbers, from the US side, yes, it is 500 billion, but on the India side, from the US side, it is 500 billion, but on the US side, India side also, it's a huge impact on the employment, the economy, and also the how much amount of dollar amount is flowing in is also equally important. Foreign investments are also happening. So absolutely, that's a good question.
Okay. And for those viewers who are tuning in, I think it's a historic deal between India and the United States, the details of which have now emerged, by the way, of a joint statement between India and the US. As of this morning, we have more clarity on what the deal will be. But agri sector has now partially opened up, as I mentioned earlier. For the benefit of our viewers, few vegetables will continue to remain protected. In fact, largely all vegetables and grains will be protected. And so, the government has nicely and beautifully put out graphics on what will remain protected so as to allay fears of farmers in India. Let me quickly read out those vegetables, including potato, garlic, mushrooms, snake gourd. Kundru, pumpkin, squash, gourds, green pepper, okra, which is bhindi, peas and beans, they will continue to be protected. So you will not be finding any of the US made agriculture products or produce in Indian markets as far as these sectors is concerned. So they will remain protected, including, for that matter, frozen vegetables, potatoes, peas, and beans, provisionally preserved vegetables, including cucumber and mushrooms. All of these will continue to remain protected. Vegetables, dried vegetables, beans and pulses, roots and tubers will remain protected. So and bananas and mangoes will also remain protected. So those are beautiful graphics there that we will be putting out on our screens very, very shortly, that we were showing to our viewers as to what will remain protected, what sectors will open up. All right, as you can see on your screens, what sectors will open up, what will continue to remain protected. Now, as far as India-US trade deal and the details of what it means for both the countries' goods reaching each other's markets. India-US trade deal, the government of India says, will lower cost and time for Indian goods to enter US market, will support Indian MSMEs, help Indian goods meet global standards, bring down cost for consumers in sectors where, especially in agri sectors where US goods will be allowed. So that's as far as ease of doing business is concerned. There'll be joint cooperation between the two countries, which will accelerate India's digital and AI ecosystem, increase trade tech like GPUs, data center equipments, cheap GPUs will also come in from the US, which is a good thing for India's AI capabilities, for India's data centers, for GCCs particularly. It will also lower costs for companies, and there'll be greater investment, skill development. So all in all, the details pointing to there, what we already have known, Nancy, for a very long time, that it was going to be a deal that would give Indian goods greater access to the US market. That's coming. But, before I think we're going to wrap up in just a short while, but I also want to talk about what it means for India's MSME sector. And Ravi can also come in there. India's MSME sector, Ravi, we've also seen quite a boost there for MSME by the way of various funds that were announced in budget 2027, including 10,000 crore rupees for MSME growth. And now this deal is likely to also boost India's MSME sector, make it more competitive. And I think that's good news there for India's economy, because MSME sector currently employs about 4 to 5%. We want that number to go up. We want India's MSME, to come at par with global MSME sector, and how MSMEs in the US are performing, or for that market in European economies are doing. And I think this deal would be a win-win. Will give some sort of boost there for India's small, medium enterprises operating in India.
So certainly, Shweta, if you look into when Trump took up the presidency and then raised the tariff, most of the time, if you see, the MSMEs got impacted, and that was a big blow because of the instability of the statements or hiking tariffs or so on and so forth. because of which it got impacted. Now, if you look into the kind of trade deal that we signed, it comes back to its normal routes of increasing the trade deals between these MSMEs can prosper, and the employment. The See, if you look into the Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal's and the team's expectations are, we want to be on one of the world's leading MSME producing countries in the world, where we want to increase the employment for all these mid-range companies that are we as India depend heavily on these MSMEs. So it is a great statement, because it creates a lot of employment. It opens up the market, and it also shows in next prospective years, and this industry is going to boost the economy and boost the employment, along with bringing quality goods to US, as well as bringing good amount of investments to India.
I think before I hand it back to Nancy, I think it's important to mention we're looking at the details emerging of that landmark trade deal between India and the US, and India is reiterating there that we have fully protected sensitive sectors, including wheat, rice, and poultry, under the trade pact with the US. And these sectors will still not be open to US agriculture produce. So I think that's an important clarification there as far as agri sector is concerned. We're partially opening up agri sector, and this is for the first time we're doing so. We haven't done so in case of European Union as well. We'll try and get you more details as far as what opens up, and what sort of impact will it have on those particular elements, those particular produce which has now opened up to US import. But no concession has been granted on poultry, milk, cheese, ethanol, tobacco. That's the clarification coming in from the Indian government as of this early morning. Also important to point, as far as Russian oil is concerned, Nancy, that remains a point of contention.
Absolutely.
What India says and has been saying is that we are protecting India's energy requirements. Right. It's a sovereign, it's supposed to be a sovereign decision, but US is saying exactly the opposite. US is saying that India has committed to stop purchasing Russian oil.
Right. Well, thank you so much, Shweta, for joining me on the broadcast. Thank you so much, Ravi, for joining me on the broadcast. Well, what happens with the deal? It's a landmark deal. Now, first tranche is out. The first interim framework is out. Now, what it means for India and what it means for US, only time will tell as the deal will pan out. That's all. It's time for us to slip into a quick commercial breather. Keep watching News 9.